Hi, Abe.
Hello, Mario. How are you?
Good. Still awake?
How's that?
Still awake?
Of
Because
course, of
you've
course.
been up since 4 o'clock, right?
What?
You've been up since 4 in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. When I'm active with China, I got to be up that time, anyways. It's okay.
Ah, it's page 145, actually. I think I wrote the
Yep.
end of last one.
We are on page 145,
Yes.
starting Shir Dalid, which is the mitzvahs of Tosefah Shabbos. Let's just wait a minute, gather the forces, gather the troops. Hope everyone's had a nice week so far.
Baruch Hashem, thank you.
So in the previous shiurim, we learned about the mitzvah of adlokas neiros, lighting candles. We learned that when women light candles, they generally accept Shabbos at the time of candle lighting. This year, we will study the halachos of when and how Shabbos is accepted in greater detail, as well as the halachot of Tosefet Shabbos, adding to Shabbos by accepting it earlier than nightfall. The Gemara Masechet Rosh Hashanah Yoma derives the mitzvah of Tosefet Shabbos from psukim in the Torah. In the first stage, the Gemara addresses Yom Kippur specifically, and then it extends the principle from Yom Kippur to Shabbos and other days of Yom Tov. So it says in Rosh Hashanah, Daf Tes Amud Aleph, Midatanya v'nisam es nafsho sechem besisha. It says you shall start to afflict your soul on the 9th day of Tishrei. So I don't get it. Yochel B'Tisha? What do you mean? Yom Kippur is the 10th, not the 9th. Talmud Lomer Ba'erev. So what it meant was the 9th at night. So I Ba'erev Yachol Mishetechshach. So I might think you got to mamish wait until nightfall. Let's say until Shkia, Talmud Lomer B'Tisha. Well, Shkia is the end of Tisha. You have to start fasting already before Shkia. Melamed shemosifin mechol al kodesh. We take away some of the chol and add kodesh into the erev Yom Kippur. And not only erev Yom Kippur, but even Motzei Yom Kippur. Ein li'ela b'knisaso b'tziosu minayin Talmud Lomer me'erev ad erev. Ein li'ela Yom Kippurim shabbos minayin. Talmud Lomer tishbesu. There by Yom Kippur it says tishbesu Shabbos. Yamim tovim minayin Talmud Lomer shabbatchem. Okay, it's a komokum sheyesh bo shvus. Shvus means refrain from work. In all those cases, whether it's Yom Kippur, Shabbos, or Yom Tov, moisifim mechol al kodesh. So this is the derivation. So in the first part of this Gemara, the Gemara stated that Rabbi Akiva derives the notion of Tosefes from Shemitah, where one must cease certain agricultural activities earlier than the beginning of the Shemitah year. The Gemara then states that Rabbi Shmuel, who is the classic Bar Plukta of Rabbi Akiva, derives the mitzvah of Tosefes from the Raisa cited here about Yom Kippur. And we have focused on this derivation of the Baraisa rather than related to Shemitah, since the Rishonim accept this derivation as the one used practically for adding to Shabbos and Yom Tov, as we will see from the next sources. By the way, I saw in the Orgedayo ones that you see Yom Kippur is called Shabbos Shabboso. I mean, there's a hierarchy. Yom Tov we don't do work, but you're allowed to do work that is involved in cooking. Oichel nefesh. So you're allowed to cook on Shabbos. You refrain from all work, but you're allowed to eat and drink. On Yom Kippur, the Shvus is the greatest. You can't work, and you can't eat or drink. So it goes higher and higher. But they're all connected. That's why this limud involves all three of these entities. Which days does the mitzvah of Tosefos apply to? Well, the Gemara seems to clearly state that the mitzvah of Tosefos applies to Shabbos and Yom Tov. Rishonim disagree about this. The Rambam only mentions this Tosefos of Chol Al HaKodesh, Yom Kippur. Kishem sheshvus malacha bein b'yom bein b'layla. We're on page 146. Just like we can't work on Yom Kippur day or night, kach shvus linui bein b'yom bein b'layla. Same thing with not eating. The tzarich loisiv mechol hakodesh, you have to start even before Yom Tov. B'knisaso v'tzioso, and you have to add to fasting a little bit before the holiday and a little bit at the end. So the Rambam takes it straight from our Gemara. Kloimar, Hischil lotzum u'lisanas me'erev Tisha somach lasiri. You have to start fasting on the 9th of Tishrei, a little bit before Shkia. And this halacha is being brought in Hilchos Shvisas Osor, which refers to Yom Kippur. V'chein b'yitzia, shoya b'inuyav ma'at malayla achad asar somach lasiri. We extend our fast a little bit into the 11th day. But he doesn't mention anything about Shabbos or Yom Tov. The Beis Yosef, here in his commentary on the Rambam, that the obligation to sanctify part of the weekday applies only to Yom Kippur, in contrast to the conclusion of the Gemara cited earlier. Rambam b'Perek Hey, lo yizkir din Tosefos zeh. In Hilchos Shabbos, he doesn't mention Tosefos Shabbos. Because of a Rambam Mag Perek Aleph Hilchos Shvisas Asor, the Taima Mishum de Lesle Tosefos Dvar Torah, Elali Yom Kippur Levad. The Magid Mishnah explains that according to the Rambam, the din of Tosefos Minat Torah only applies to Yom Kippur. The Svirele da Alocha commanded Dorsh L'Kor L'Dorsh Achrina Ad Kan L'Shono. Because he is of the opinion that we darshan this pasuk for something else. The Gemara states that Rabbi Kiva utilizes the psukim about Yom Kippur to teach other halachas, specifically the mitzvah to eat on the 9th of Tishrei to prepare for Yom Kippur. The Rambam seems to be following the view of Rabbi Kiva and assumes that the derivation of Tosefos from Shemitah only applies to Yom Kippur and not to any other days. The Beis Yosef then explains that according to this view, the Magid Mishnah explaining the Rambam, there is no obligation for Tosefos for Shabbos and Yom Tov, even on a rabbinic level. Even though the Magid only mentioned it on a Torah level for Yom Kippur. The Beis Yosef says that this is also the view of the Tur, who omitted mention of this rule regarding Shabbos, which conflicts with the view of his father, the Rosh, who does accept Tosefos Shabbos as a mitzvah. This is all in the Beis Yosef. Umashma le-Dvar Torah, shekosov lav dafka. When the Magid mentioned that Yom Kippur was Minat Torah, that's lav dafka. The Rabbanan nami lesle Tosefos. Don't be medayek from what the Magid Mishnah said to say, oh, maybe Yom Kippur is Doraisa, but Shabbos and Yom Tov there's a Tosefos midrabanan. No, there's no Tosefos at all. The im lokei lo aylo lashmito. He wouldn't have left it all out. Rabbeinu, shishmi din of Tosefos, the Tur, who also left out the din of Tosefos, near the sphere like Rambam, the less like Tosefos l'Shabbos v'tema. It's a wonder. Amai shavak tzvar sarosh the isle Tosefos l'Shabbos. the Tur, who is the son of the Rosh, why did the son go against the father? So the view of the Rif, the Rosh, and others, unlike the Rambam and Tur, is that Tosefus is biblically mandated for Shabbos as well. The Rif in Yuma says, Ein li ela Yom Kippur Shabbos Breishis Minayin. Tamad Lomer Tish B'Su Yomim Tovim Minayin. Tamad Lomer Shabbaschem. Kol Shvisa Shat Hashem Zat Hamoisav L'Beim L'Beim Machre. So it looks like Tosefus for both Shabbos and Yom Tiv is also Minator. Unlike the Beis Yosef, the Bir Halacha claims that the Rambam subscribes to an obligation of Tosefus Shabbos on a rabbinic level, which he mentions elsewhere. Says the Chofetz Chaim, he says, even though the Rambam didn't mention it where we looked, that there is a mitzvah, at least rabbinically, for Shabbos to add Kedusha into Chol. Mashma Pshita, the Lishta, the Rava Magid, Shuva Beis Yosef. Which we would have also darshaned from learning the Magid Mishnah. Not the Beis Yosef. That which the Beis Yosef asked, why did the Rambam leave it out? The Emes Kvar, the Rambam mentions that they would blow shofar blasts at the onset of Shabbos. Now there, L'chora, it was blown while it was still daytime. So the Rambam seems to be holding that there you have to add, at least rabbinically, the Kedusha of Shabbos into Chol. So the Shulchan Aruch rules in accordance with the opinion of the Rif and the Rosh. We once mentioned early on in our Tzurba series that the rule that the Shulchan Aruch used often was the three Rishonim he looked at was the Rambam, the Rif, and the Rosh. And if it was two, so here's the, and usually, I'd say the vast majority of the time, it's rare to see the Shulchan Aruch, Rav Yosef Karo, not hold like the Rambam. But this is an example where it was 2 against 1, the Rif and the Rosh, paskined that the mitzvah of Tosefos applies even for Shabbos. He cited this view as Yesh Omrim, since in his view the Rambam and Tur disagree. Yesh Omrim shetzarich l'aseh b'chol hakodesh. The Magen Avram clarifies that the Shulchan Aruch agrees with the Rif and the Rosh that the mitzvah of Tosefos for Shabbos is biblical. Shetzarich l'hoitzif avi mitzvahs aseh midaraisa. Talking about the end of Shabbos, the Shulchan Aruch cites the opinion that Tosefos Shabbos is a mitzvah as the accepted opinion without the Yesh Omrim qualifier. Ma'achrin tfilas arvis k'dei l'hoitzif b'chol hakodesh. It doesn't say Yesh Omrim. So based on that, it looks like the Shulchan Aruch accepted the Rif and the Rosh. Now, when we add Kedusha Shabbos, let's say it's 18 minutes, let's say whatever it is, whatever that period of time you add as Tosefos Shabbos, is there just a prohibition of malacha, or is it mamish like Shabbos? What is the nature of this Tosefos? Does accepting Shabbos or Yontif completely imbue that time with the halachic status of Shabbos or Yontif? Or does it merely create a prohibition against performing malacha? The nafkamina of this question may pertain to whether one may also fulfill the mitzvah of Suda Shabbos during this time. A very practical issue for those who make early Shabbos. If the additional time is deemed part of Shabbos or Yontif, then one may certainly fulfill the mitzvah of eating the meal during that time. But if this Tosefos only creates a prohibition against violating Shabbos, then perhaps one does not fulfill the mitzvah during that time. So the Mishnah Masechta Pesachim, as explained by the Rishonim, appears to support the first side, that it's Mamish Shabbos. Erev Psachim Samach L'Mincha Lo Yochel Adam Ad Shetechshach. Erev Pesach, near Mincha time, you have to stop eating. Rashi comments that not eating in the afternoon enables a person to eat matzah at night with a good appetite, which is considered a Hidur mitzvah, to eat matzah. Right? So when the Seder comes, you can have a good appetite for matzah, mishum Hidur mitzvah.
But don't we have the same halacha by Shabbos? Shabbos also you're supposed to nichnas b'te'avon.
Yes, that's true. Let's see if that comes up. There's no question we have the same din. Tosfos asks, why did the Mishnah add the word until dark? Ad shetechshach. If the reason for the prohibition is to ensure an appetite, then of course the prohibition applies until dark, at which time the obligation to eat matzah takes effect. Tosfos answers that these words highlight the difference between matzah, which must be eaten after nightfall, and other Shabbos and Yom Tov nighttime meals, which may be eaten earlier than that. Ad shetechshach, makshi, amay yitzrich ad shetechshach. Why did we need those words? Pshita. Can't eat matzah until nightfall. So why did he need to say that? But the Gemara Gabi Shabbos v'Yomim Tovim Loktani Le. And the Gemara for Shabbos and Yom Tov, the Gemara didn't mention that about stopping to eat. The Omer Ari Mikurvil.
Oh, Ernie, I thought we ad shetachshach because of Sfira, basically that you need to wait.
Pesach.
Pesach.
First night.
Pesach.
Yeah, Pesach.
Matzah.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah, we have first night.
Sphere is the next night.
Right.
So
yeah, but it's part of the counting. Okay.
no, we don't count the first day. This has to do with eating matzah.
No, I understand, but you count the first day from the night of the first night, and then you
No,
count on the second day. You count on the second day.
Yeah, we start the second night. Second night is when we start.
Yeah, because we say Yom Echad. So if you say Yom Echad, the Echad started from the beginning of Pesach. It didn't start from there.
No, first day is the 16th. First day of the Omer is the 16th of Nisan. It starts the night before. Everywhere in the world, it's the 16th is the Sphere Omer starts the second day.
I understand the first. Okay.
And here we're talking about the Tosfos is medayek regarding matzah, and it's asking the question: how come it's not mentioned by Shabbos and Yom Tov? So the Rima Korvil says the Gabi matzah davka be'inan at shetechshach. It's because you have to eat when the Exodus happened. The Exodus happened at night, so we're makpid the first night of the Seder. We wait until actually Tzeitzah Kechavim. We wait very long. The Gabi matzah the ad shetechshach k'netam b'tosefta haPesach u'matzah more mitzvasa mishetechshach when it gets dark. B'tayim mishum d'ksiv v'achlus ha'basar b'layla zeh u'matzah u'mor is kashul Pesach. So the Korban Pesach has to be eaten at night. So matzah and more have to be eaten with the Korban Pesach. They all have to be eaten at night. Aval Suda Shabbos v'yomim tovim matzi achalahu mibad yom. When we daven mincha in the summertime at 6:30, and Shabbos doesn't start till 8, and we come home at 7:15 and we have our Suda Shabbos, the fact that we're allowed to do it is based on this Tosfos. Aval Suda Shabbos v'yomim tovim matzi achalahu mibad yom. You can start eating your Shabbos and Yom Tov meal, not Pesach. Remember, because Pesach has a unique mitzvah, matzah. Now, we're going to see as well by Sukkot, there's a Gzeira Shava 2:2, Tesvav, that Pesach is Tesvav Nisan, Sukkot is Tesvav Tishrei. And since there's this drasha that you cannot eat Pesach night until nightfall, why? Because you have to eat the korban and the matzah at night. We do, but technically, if you wanted to make a din, the Sukkot meal could also have been eaten early. We don't do it because of that side issue of 2:2. Aval Suda Shabbat, or like Shavuos. But there is a different issue because we want Tamimim. There at the end of the Omer, you usually are in shul late because we don't want to start Shavuos until Mamish Tzeis Kachavim, because Sfira has to be Tamimim. So it's interesting. If I was in Shir with my Rebbe, I would ask. So the practical is for the second day of Yontif, but for all first days of Yontif, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuos, we don't really have this cool of the Tosfos. Avos Shabbos. Now Shabbos we do. Shabbos during the summer months, like we start davening earlier. The Yom Tov Motzi Ochlu Mibad Yom Kin Omer Perak Tfilas HaShachar Mispal Adam Shel Shabbos Be'erev Shabbos. You already, Rav Matzli Shabbos Be'erev Shabbos. The Gemara says Rav davened Kabbalah Shabbos and Baruch early while it was still daylight. And you could say Kiddush Hayom half an hour before Shkia, like we do in the summer months. According to Tosfos, since one may eat the Friday night or Yom Tov night meal before nightfall, it would seem that the time of Tosefet Shabbos and Yom Tov is considered to have the full status of Shabbos and Yom Tov. We made a chakira. We tried to differentiate. What is that period of Tosefet Shabbos? What does it mean? Is it just a gzeira to stay away from malacha? Like Chazal made a fence, violating Shabbos is a big stringency. You get skila if you do it b'mezid. You have to bring a chatas if you did it b'shogeg. So they said stay away from malacha even 10 minutes before as a gzeira. But then you would not be able to be motzi, right? There's a din, you have to have 2 meals on Shabbos, 3 meals. Friday night, Shabbos day, and Shalosh Shudas. But if you didn't eat your first meal on Shabbos, then you didn't eat your 3 meals. You weren't makayim the mitzvah of Sudas Shabbos. So the Tosfos seems to be saying that this Tosefes has mamish the din of Shabbos. That's why we can eat the meal early, and it still counts for us as one of the 3 Shabbos meals. However, the Gemara Masechta Ksubos and the verse Meforshim there appear to support the second side, that Tosefes Shabbos, all it is an Isra Malacha. It's a Geder. It's a Gzeira, to stay away from Malachas on Shabbos. Says Ksubos Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, Parach Rav Achai, Ema de Masur Lo B'Shabbos V'Yomim Tovim. The context of the Gemara relates to a complex discussion as to the source for the Mishnah, which teaches that a father is entitled to a young daughter's earning through the age of 12 and a half. Within an attempt to explain the source for this halacha, Rav Achai responds that the father can marry her off on Shabbos or Yom Tov. The Masur Lo B'Shabbos V'Yomim Tovim, that Rav Achai says he married her off on Shabbos. Tosfos comments that the wedding did not actually take place on Yom Tov. You're not allowed to hold a wedding. Look at Moed Katan, where the Gemara explains that one may not mix ein ma'arvin simcha b'simcha, like a Yom Tov and a wedding. But you have to do it right before. Says Tosfos, the Masur Lo B'Shabbos of Yom Tov, Ikal Meimar, Dacha Arisha Achas Lefnei. We're talking about an hour before Yom Tov. Shuk Yom Tov Leini Malacha. The Tosefes Deraisa, Ubetela B'Osa Shom and Amlacha. That the prohibition against doing malacha in the period of Tosefes Yom Tov is midaraisa, and you don't do malacha at that time. But he only talks about Isra malacha. He doesn't say that all of the dinim of Yom Tov apply, right? Tosfos indicate that Tosefes Yom Tov relates only to refraining from malacha, and therefore you're distancing yourself from violating Shabbos and Yom Tov. But that time does not actually have the sanctity of Shabbos or Yom Tov, and the restriction to weddings on Yom Tov doesn't apply then. Rav Elchanan Wasserman notes that the 2 passages of Tosfos do not appear to agree with each other regarding this point. Right? The Tosfos Reish Arvei Psachim, which we learned on the previous daf, Kosvu, The achilas matzah idavka ad shetechshach. You have to wait to eat matzah until nightfall. Not like Erev Shabbos where you can do Kiddush already while it's still day. The timer, what's the reason for that? Mishum T'chsiv, Balayla, right? Matzah you have to eat at night. The Tosefes Yontiv Lav V'Layla, Umashmi Lav Kra Roy Lomar the Yotzemi Pesach Umatzah B'Tosefes Yontiv. Without that pasuk, we might have said that you could be Yotzei Pesach, Korban Pesach and Matzah during that period of Tosefes. Even Shekidush Le'in Yisrael Malacha Wadin Le'in Mitzvah Sayom. Like when you make Kiddush, not only did it bring in prohibition against work, but it brought all the mitzvahs in. However, Kasha, the Ksubis, Mem Zayin, because of the Tosfos we just learned, that Tosefes Yontif like a mitzvah v'simcha b'chagecha. There is no v'simcha, there's no marvin b'simcha. That's why you could do a wedding then, after Asr Malacha D'Oraisa. U'maishna mitzvahs matzah and mitzvahs v'samachta. In addition to explaining that the two approaches in Tosfos disagree, because maybe they were two different Bali Tosfos, one could also resolve the contradiction raised by Rav Elchanan as follows. Tosefes Shabbos only extends Shabbos in ways that are related to Shabbos, but not in ways related to the calendar date. For example, if Shabbos is day 20 of the Omer, one may still not count the Omer until nightfall, since it's still only the 19th day of the Omer. The prohibition of marrying on the festivals, which is derived from the fact that one must rejoice in connection with the festival, not with a different joyous occasion, is such an example as well. This prohibition does not stem from the sanctity of Yom Tov specifically, but rather stems from the fact that it is a holiday. It applies to Chol HaMoed as well. Therefore, the prohibition does not apply to the time of Tosefes Yom Tov, even if one has accepted upon it oneself the prohibition not to form halacha. The Magen Avraham may support this explanation, as he writes, that it may be permitted to consume chametz after Pesach, even before performing Havdalah. The reason is that the prohibition is not related to the Yom Tov per se, but rather to the entire 7-day period of Pesach, which is already concluded, even if Havdalah was not yet performed. So, on the more practical level, poskim discuss whether one who accepted Shabbos early fulfills the mitzvah of eating the Friday night meal when eating before nightfall. According to Magen Avraham, among others, one fulfills the mitzvah, even during the time of Tosefes Shabbos. But he recommends being machmir to accommodate the opinion of those who disagree. That means wait. Even if you daven early, you should wait at least until Shkia. Kosav b'shla, b'shem Sefer Chasidim, to be called Mokum Tzarech Lechol Kazayis Balayla, or at least extend your meal so that it's already at night. K'dei l'kayim Gimel Sudas b'Shabbos, Kach Kosav Abach, b'shem the Maral Miprat. Aval the Toisus for Rosh Mashmat Yachalik Mar Sudim Bad Yom. You can even finish. You don't have to extend the meal into the night. Kol Kach v'Kach Kosav Trumas Hadesh, another Rishon. V'chein Mashma Rabbeinu Yerucham, another Rishon. V'tayim Adachar Plaga Mincha Chashvin Alayla. Remember, there is a sheet according to Rav Yehuda. Remember, we have a machlokes Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim about when do you say Ma'ariv, when there's the sheet of Rav Yehuda after Plaga Mincha is already night. You can have a Ma'ariv. However, we call Malcolm Tov Lachmer. The Mishnah Berurah accepts the view of Magen Avraham that, strictly speaking, the halacha follows those who allow eating early the nightfall. But ideally, it's best to comply with those whose opinions who are strict. Plaga Mincha is the midpoint of Mincha Ketana, the later half of the afternoon, as was discussed in the previous volume. Mincha Ketana is the latest time that one may recite Mincha according to Rabbi Yehuda, and the other time to recite Ma'ariv according to his opinion. Even if one follows the opinion of the Chachamim that one may recite Mincha until Shkia, it seems that Plaga Mincha still has significance as the earliest time that one can accept Shabbos, as can be seen from here, from other sources. So remember, Mincha Gedola is 6:30. Mincha Ketana is 9:30, and Shkia is 12. So it's 1 hour and 45 minutes added to the 9:30, 9.5 hours later. So it's and that would be Plaga Mincha. See also Kaf HaChaim, for further sources on this issue. It seems that the reasons given for those who require eating a kazayas after dark relate either to a specific requirement for the meals or concern for those opinions who do not accept Tosefes Shabbos, such as the Rambam and the Tur. But they would all appear to assume that the nature of the Tosefes is not limited to a prohibition against malacha. On the other hand, the Shulchan Aruch HaRav and Dagul Bavor focus solely on the prohibition against malacha. So we see, okay, let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Tam, Kivan de Kibbutz Love Shabbos. You accepted Shabbos early. Nechshav ke Shabbos. Lenin said the yochel kadesh v'lachol miyad. You can make kiddush and eat right away. Yuchal igmor sudasim, but you can even finish the meal even before shkia. However, yesh cholkin, we've seen who argue the sovereign sheizar limshoch sudas alayla. You should stretch your meal until nightfall. V'yochal kazayis b'layla. Tamam tekiven dagim l'sudas yalfina mimad dekosov achlu ayom ki Shabbos ayom l'Hashem. Be'inan sheikayim osam b'yom Shabbos atzmo l'chavkila nochon loch shivim. We should be concerned about that opinion. How much time do you need for Tosefes Shabbos? The Gemara doesn't give a set amount of time. Tosfos writes, within the course of a more extensive discussion, that even a small amount of time is sufficient, midoraisa. Rabbi Akiva, Mishum Desagi b'Tosefes Mashu, even a minute amount, although no specific amount of time is given. Rav Tzvi Fromer, Rav Moshe Feinstein, in the Eretz Tzvi and the Igros Moshe, suggests that 2 minutes is required. Remember, our wives are lighting candles 18 minutes before Shkia. But we go to work, so what they're saying here is it should be at least 2 minutes. We should at least have 2 minutes of Tosefes. Means if we're going to drive to shul in that 18-minute period, we should make sure that we get to shul at least 2 minutes or 3 minutes before. That's our Tosefes. Others, such as Rav Avram Bornstein, the Avnei Nezer, hold that 4 minutes is necessary. The Chaye Adam writes that to fulfill the mitzvah in its ideal form on a rabbinic level, you should accept Shabbos 30 minutes before nightfall. Kol adam chayva kol panim lifrosh b'mloch lefachos chatzi sha'a kodem halayla. Ki tzarich lo yosef ma'at mechol hakodesh ben b'knisoso ben b'tzioso v'u mitzvahs hasem in HaTorah v'alfina midichsi b'yom HaKippurim. It's learned from Yom Kippur. Uzman tosefes zeu kodem ben hashmoshes. We're talking about before Ben Hashmoshes. Ben Hashmoshes starts with Shkia. There's a separate mitzvah say of Tosefes. Should be a minimum of 30 minutes. Ki Ben Hashmoshes im Tosefes Shabbos oile kimat lechatzi shah. He says, with the Ben Hashmoshes and the Tosefes Shabbos, it's nearly half an hour. See the Ramah, who mentions announcing that Shabbos is coming 1/2 hour beforehand. According to this calculation, Tosefes Shabbos equals between 12 and 17 minutes, since Ben Hashmoshes is usually calculated as approximately 12 to 17 minutes, right? From the time of Shkia, and Ben Hashmoshes is usually 12 to 17 minutes after Shkia. And they're saying that this combination between Ben Hashmoshes and this Tosefes should be at least 30 minutes. So basically, the Chayotim is saying you shouldn't do 2 minutes, you shouldn't do 4 minutes, but you should do like 12. You should do 12 to 17 minutes. Rav Moshe Levi explains that although one fulfills the mitzvah deraisa of Tosefes by accepting Shabbos even just a few minutes early, it is customary in most places for women lighting candles to accept Shabbos earlier than that. Rav Levi writes that today many accept Shabbos about 20 minutes before Shkia. You have to add Kedusha. You have to stop doing Melacha. Kodim Zman Ben Hashmashos, before Ben Hashmashos, which starts with Shkia. Dainu Kodim Shkia Sacham. B'chein HaMinik Parshat Atah B'chol Kilos Yisrael. That's the minik. Vein Shir Min HaTorah. There's no Shir Min HaTorah. Rak Sheyirfosh Melacha B'Zman Shuvad Hayom. You have to separate at least prior to Shkia. V'yesh Oimim Sheyeh Shir Min HaTorah Tosefes Shabbos. Some say there's a Shir. V'tzorach Lifrosh B'Melacha Ma'at Kechamesh Ad Eser Dakot Lifnei Shkia Sachama. V'roi Lifrosh B'Melacha Esrim Dakot Lifnei Shkia. Like our women do, 20 minutes, 18 minutes. Shebezeh Yotzim Yidei Chovas Kol HaPoskim. V'chein HaMinik Atah B'Rav Haaretz. The Piskei Teshuvos suggests that the custom of accepting Shabbos, at least through lighting candles, approximately 20 minutes before sunset, stems from a stringency to follow the view of Rav Eliezer of Metz in the Sefer Yereim, who holds that halachic ben hashmashos begins at that time. Kama Poiskim, the Mishnah Berurah B'Klalam includes that to praise those who follow the sheet of the Yereim, shebein hashmashos matchil gimel rivei meal, 5 to 15 minutes, koydem hashkia. 20 dakos koydem hashkia. You should stop working 20 minutes before shkia. 30 dakos koydem hashkia ashrilo. In most communities in the diaspora, women light candles 18 minutes before Shabbos. Some cities in Eretz Yisrael accept Shabbos earlier than that. For example, it is well known that the widespread custom in Jerusalem is for women to light candles and accept Shabbos 40 minutes before sunset. And in Tzfat, Shabbos is accepted 30 minutes before sunset. Now, what's the earliest time? We have discussed the minimum amount of time necessary. What is the earliest time? The Rama writes that one may accept Shabbos as early as Plag HaMincha. The Mishnah Berurah explains that one may not accept Shabbos earlier than Plag HaMincha, and if one does so, it doesn't take effect. In Kibbul Lava Shabbos according to Plag HaMincha, Ein B'Kabbalos Klum, it doesn't mean anything. In Kibbul Atzmol Hashem Tosfos Shabbos Ad Shav Revi, that means an hour and a quarter prior to Shkia. That's up to that period of time. If you did it, you shouldn't perform malacha at that time, but you shouldn't do it more than that. This halacha is especially relevant for those who make early Shabbos. In such a case, both women lighting candles early as well as man davening in shul must be careful not to accept Shabbos too early, prior to Plag. A number of sources appear to mention the possibility of accepting Shabbos even earlier than Plag HaMincha. The Ramah refers to accepting Shabbos 1 or 2 hours before nightfall, even though Plag HaMincha is only 1 hour and a quarter before nightfall. And the Bir Allah also writes that many prominent Achronim allow accepting Shabbos at that time. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, quoted in the Shmir Shabbos Kilchas, explains that all of these sources are employing the time calculations of Rabbeinu Tam for sunset and nightfall, and referring to his calculation for Plag HaMincha, which is close to the time of sunset. However, today the nearly universal custom is to follow the opinions of those who disagree with Rabbeinu Tam, except as a stringency after Shabbos. Therefore, one may not accept Shabbos earlier than Plag HaMincha from sunset. And this is the accepted halacha. A minority opinion permits accepting Shabbos earlier than that. See the Minchas Yitzchak, Rav Dayan Weiss. The issue of calculating the times of sunset and nightfall, the period of time, and the Gaonim will be discussed in more detail in the next volume. Any comments, questions so far?
Once you accept the Shabbos, do you have to consistently do that, or you can 1 week like this, 1 week like that?
I don't think you have to consistently, like what we do summertime, right? In the summer we accept it, but later on we don't accept it. So
No, but if you accept it in the summer, can you one Shabbos do it like this, so Shabbos do it like that?
yes, I think you can.
Yep.
I think you can. You wondering whether if you do something 3 times in a row, it becomes like a
Okay.
midder, a net there that you have to have it at Torah or like that. I don't think that's the common practice. I think the common practice, based on where you are, what you're doing, you can decide to go to a later minyan or an early minyan. You can decide. I don't think you're held to have to do that. It's a good question. We certainly don't do it all year round because the rest of the year we don't accept Shabbos early. We accept Shabbos early only in the summer. So it's not like it bound us, the fact that we did it 3 weeks in a row during the summer, that for the rest of the year. What was that? I think Bernie is out of town. Right, Walter?
Yeah, Bernie is out of town.
Bernie is out of town. I think Harold is out of town too.
Mhm.
Can you put some ice in there? Chaim Eisenberg is out of town too, I think.
Yeah, they're all out of town.
Huh?
Bernie is hiking somewhere near Denver. I don't know.
Right. Who is he hiking with?
Well, his kids all came from New York. They're hiking all together.
Very nice. 156. We have seen so far that according to the accepted halacha, one may accept Shabbos beginning at Plaga Mincha anytime until a few minutes before Shkia. But what is the methodology? We must still determine how one accepts Shabbos early. Do you just stop doing malacha? Do you have to do something or say something? The Ritva explains that when it comes to fulfilling Tosefes Shabbos, one must recite some type of bracha or tefillah related to Shabbos. Tosefes ze'eno b'dvarim. It's not only through words, ubito mlacha b'vad, ela sheyosifenu b'dvarim shel kedusha b'tefillah or b'kiddush. You have to say holy words or tefillah or kiddush. However, Tosfos disagree. Tosfos questions why the Gemara elsewhere states that only Bein Hashmoshes of Yom Kippur is forbidden in Melacha and not the time of Tosefes Shabbos. Uktsas kosher, the beperek mokum shenagum psachim, boy lemeimar the had Yom Kippurim sveiko aser the Bein Hashmoshes shelo. The reason the Bein Hashmoshes it's Safek Yom Safek Laila. So the period between Shkia and Seis is Bein Hashmoshes. Now, when it's Yom Kippur, that Bein Hashmoshes, it's a Safek. And so there, this if it's a Safek by Yom Kippur, which is D'oraisa, we say you don't do anything. Now, I thought we said that Tosefes Yom Kippur has to start even while it's still daytime before Shkia. Or nightfall after Yom Kippur is over. Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank makes a diuk, and he infers from Tosfos' assumption that the prohibition to perform malacha begins a few minutes before Shabbos, that one is not required to verbalize one's acceptance. As long as you desist from malacha, or as long as you stopped eating on Erev Yom Kippur, you fulfilled the mitzvah. L'divrei in the Mikrei Kodesh, the Tzvi Pesach Frank, the Rav of Yerushalayim in the 1950s. You don't have to do anything to trigger this Tosefes. It comes on its own. And it prohibited on its own. Even if you didn't say anything, yesh mitzvah asem in Torah. B'Tosefes linub Yom Kippur l'Shabbos b'Yom Shabbos. So if one accepts Shabbos earlier, then those last few moments when the sanctity takes effect automatically, how do you do that practically? The Achronim disagree as to whether one must accept it verbally or a mental acceptance suffices. There are more rights with respect to Tosefes Yom Kippur that mental acceptance does not suffice. Ayin le'el, dim kibul b'lev lavi kabbalah. On the other hand, the Mishnah Berurah, citing the Bach and the Gra, maintain that mental acceptance is effective. The Shmir Shabbos Kolchasa in practice writes that verbal acceptance is preferable. The Mishnah Berurah said the same thing, writes that one should accept Shabbos verbally. He then references some of the sources mentioned in the text here who disagree that you can accept it mentally. Post facto, but even mental acceptance qualifies as acceptance. Kabbalah Shabbos v'yontiv eina al yedei prisha b'melacha greda. It's not just from staying away from melacha. Eli nasis al yedei dibur. You can say it's Shabbos now. Hainu sha'omer b'pesh mekabel avos Shabbos. Yeah, I'm accepting Shabbos. Onam gamim lo otzi b'shvasav. Even if he didn't say that, ela ragamer b'libo l'kabel Shabbos, but he made a mental acceptance to accept Shabbos. Arezu kabbalah v'yifar shatzim v'kom lo chasur, and then stay away from melacha. The Shmira Shabbos Kilchasa notes that one may also accept Shabbos when reciting the end of Lechadodi. Although the majority of synagogues today do not reach this section of the Kabbalah Shabbos before sunset, meaning it's going to be only relevant for us in the summer, right? When we reserve our Tosefet, when we reserve our acceptance until we say Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos, which is usually the customary practice. Usually wintertime, it's not going to be Noyeg. But there may be relevant for those joining a minyan making early Shabbos. If you're going to daven Kabbalah Shabbos and Ma'ariv while it's still daytime, or Omer mibod yom apiyut boy b'shalom or mizmor shel yom haShabbos, b'Shabbos samach liyom tov or b'yom tov shechal b'Shabbos, l'noagim shalom al chadoidi arezu Kabbalah Shabbos. Right now, he says a full Chadodi on Yontif. So when you say Mizmor Shalem HaShabbos, that's already Kabbalah Shabbos. In most places, if Shabbos is accepted at the regular time, the Chadodi is not recited until after the start of Shabbos. Therefore, in order to fulfill the mitzvah to sever Shabbos properly and accept Shabbos at least a few minutes before sunset, one would need to complete Mincha before that time. Consequently, shuls should ideally plan the start of Mincha to be early enough to finish so that you can accept Tosefet Shabbos 2 to 3 minutes before Shkia properly. The issue of reciting Mincha before accepting Shabbos and what to do if one cannot complete Mincha in time to accept Shabbos a few minutes before sunset will be discussed later in this year. We mentioned that if the entire congregation accepts Shabbos together before sunset by reciting the end of Lechadodi, that is treated as accepting Shabbos. The Aruch HaShulchan suggests that when one accepts Shabbos together with the Tzibur, the acceptance is treated with more severity, and even activities that may normally be allowed for an individual during Ben Hashmashos would not be permitted. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, Kosev Rabbeinu Abbas Yosef, Achra Aniyas Baruch. When we say Baruch by Ma'ariv, Aval Bishadain Yomhu, and you're saying Baruch while it's still light, right? Because you're accepting Shabbos early. Ein Ma'arvin vein Toimnin. You cannot make an Erev Chatzeros, combine different Rishuyos into one, so that you can carry into a joint courtyard, or Hatmana, which is like insulating food, to putting it on a blech. Certain types of insulation are considered less strict and are permitted during Ben Hashmoshes, where the insulation doesn't increase the heat level. We'll learn the halachas of Atmana in more detail in later volumes. But once you say Baruch, during Ben Hashmoshes, you could do Eruvin and Toimnin, but you can't with Baruch. Shum da'ar kablul Shabbos aleim. Uli you don't have Amiros Mizmor Shalem Shabbos. Kaniyas Baruch Uli do. The Aruch HaShulchan is pointing out that for us Ashkenazim, when we say Mizmor Shalom Shabbos, it's like Baruch Hu. Ad kan Lashono, that's the Beis Yosef. Ulefizeh l'didan shomrim l'chadodi avizeh Kabbalah Shabbos. Says the Orach HaShulchan, Afagav de l'kamon, Simin Shin Tzadi Gimel, Evi Rabbeinu Beis Yosef Shtei Deos. He brings two opinions. Imutu la'ar ben hashmoshes, kishakibel lav toisef Shabbos. Can you make an eruv in ben hashmoshes if you already accepted Shabbos, ayin sham? And v'lama sosum kan l'isra. How come here he assumes that it's prohibited? Yeshloimer desham mayri b'yachid shekibel lav toisef Shabbos. That means a yachid who accepted toisef Shabbos earlier, maybe during ben hashmoshes, is still allowed to do the eruv. Aval kan mayri b'tzibur, which is more chomer. L'chein chamir afilu ben hashmoshes. According to Orach HaShulchan, although establishing an eruv is permitted during Ben HaShmoshes, when the entire tzibur accepted Shabbos earlier, let's say they said Ma'ariv 15 minutes before Shkia, when Ben HaShmoshes shows up, you can't do it. The acceptance of Shabbos by the tzibur is stricter in another respect. The Shulchan Aruch writes that if the majority of the tzibur has accepted Shabbos, an individual must follow the tzibur and is obligated to accept Shabbos at the same time. They have no choice. So how do all these guidelines apply today? When many communities have multiple synagogues, some have Shabbos starting earlier than others. The Menucha Zav explains that one is obligated to accept Shabbos based upon the times followed by one's regular synagogue. Piskei Teshuvah says the same thing. If Shabbos for the majority of the congregation accepted Shabbos already from Plag, the stragglers have no choice. What if there's many shuls? Even if there's the majority of people that have one shul, other shuls don't have to follow that shul. But if a man is davening in a certain shul, you should accept Shabbos when the rest of the community accepts Shabbos. Saul points out that there's, but you're someone who davens in one of those minyonim, whatever your practice is. Saul pointed out that some shuls have 2 minyon. You can recite the weekday mincha since he personally didn't accept Shabbos. According to Rav Levi, if one is running late to an early Shabbos minyan, one would not be allowed to drive to shul if the minyan is already recited l'chadodi. Rav Levi notes that the Shulchan Aruch Harav holds that if one has yet arrived in shul, not yet arrived in shul, he need not accept Shabbos together with the congregation if the majority of the community has not yet accepted Shabbos. The individual was not in shul when they accepted Shabbos. Even though that's his normal practice to daven in that shul, if the majority of the city had not accepted Shabbos yet, then you can be makel. Okay, we'll stop here today. Any questions, comments, or arot?